Hi, everybody. Hi, Travis.
Hello.
So, you changed our life in transportation with Uber. You digitalized the urban transport with Atoms, your company. Are you now trying to do the same thing to the physical economy, such as food, mining, logistics, turning atoms into software?
Well, look, I think, an entrepreneur's journey sort of is never just modular and sort of separate. It's all kind of part of the same story. And from the very beginning, I've always been about what I call digitizing the physical world. And that means treating atoms like bits. And Uber was maybe the first chapter in that, which is when you first use it, you had glass, phone with glass, and you would tap on that glass and a car would appear. That was sci-fi for some period of time. A car would physically, in the physical world, would move towards you because you tapped on a phone. And so it was the beginning, but it was really an app in an app store. And where we're going is to a sort of much more integrated place where you're really treating atoms like bits. I like to say there's the bits, the bits world we know is a computer. There's CPU, storage, network. CPU manipulates the bits, storage stores bits, network moves bits from point A to point B. If you're treating atoms like bits, CPU manipulates bits. What manipulates atoms? That's manufacturing. Storage stores bits. What stores atoms? Real estate. Network moves bits from point A to point B. What moves atoms? That'd be logistics or transport. And so these are your three core computing resources in an atoms-based computer. I know I'm going a little long here, but I'm trying to explain. That's kind of how we view the world. And so our company is about physical automation, sort of a physical automation to transform industry, making machines very specific around different industries, food, mining, and transport, to sort of bring AI into the physical world. Yeah.
So these fields were business, we consider them as business. Now they are becoming strategic infrastructure. So you give life and a new infrastructure to this world and business. As AI moves from software into physical worlds, in your opinion, who should control this system? The private sector, the governments, or a new kind of private-public architecture?
I guess it depends what your goal is. If your goal is about progress for cities, progress for people, then you want to have a sort of foundational model for an even playing field for people to sort of compete and offer services to consumers. But it shouldn't be about control. It should be about progress. And I think that may be where sometimes regulators in lots of different jurisdictions get it wrong. Yeah.
This leads me to the next question, but I
Yeah.
guess I know how you will answer, because as you know, here you are in one of the city of the world where Uber doesn't work so much because we have a very strong taxi driver unions. So when you look at Europe's combination of strong regulators, powerful labor protections, and fragmented markets, do you see it as the hardest place in the world to scale autonomous system, or as the ultimate stress that if you win here, you can win everywhere, and in Rome especially?
Well, there's a couple things. First is, I always used to think when I was running Uber, I was like, I don't really understand how it got so controversial for one citizen to take another citizen across town. How did that become so controversial? And this comes back to the comments about progress. and about control and power. It should be very straightforward to have a system like Uber or something else that moves people really efficiently at a low cost. But for some reason, certain jurisdictions around the world just are not okay with that kind of progress, and they hold on to the past. Autonomy is like a whole new layer of that. And so, at some point, cities, countries will be surrounded at their borders with progress, and they will eventually move forward. I think in Germany recently, they sort of adopted Tesla's FSD almost a decade after it was rolled out. You will eventually get it. The question is when. And is it good that the people of Germany didn't get it for 10 years? I don't think so. There are a number of people who are sort of, well, we already know that FSD is way safer than driving a normal car, that when you have FSD plus a driver, it is way safer. So you're less safe, you're more stressed, you're living not in the future, but in the past. And the question is how long do you hold the future back in the name of regulation and control?
We should give up with the idea of technological sovereignty in your mind, or as those are strategic infrastructure, we should keep this idea of being sovereign as European.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Say it one more time.
In Europe,
Yeah.
there is a lot of talk about technological sovereignty. Do you think that from a brutally practical entrepreneur's perspective, what would a serious European autonomy strategy actually do in the next 3 or 5 years? What is just political theater? What is right to do?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of good intentions with regulations. And a lot of times you see regulations, you go, you know what, I understand the intention and they're trying to get to a good place. The problem is when you get too caught up in the process versus the outcome. Right? If the outcome, Tesla FSC is like a perfect example. If the outcome is about safety for your citizens, it should have been rolled out many years ago. But if the process becomes the outcome, then it gets tough. Then something that's good for people rolls out a decade late.
Now, in this period, the attention is very focused on humanoids. But of course, we don't have, for example, the washing machine. It's not a human robots, humanoid robots that does like this. And Atom is focused on specialized robots, not human. So why this choice?
Well, look, I think there's a couple things. Anytime you see the humanoid, there was a humanoid Olympics in China recently, and you had a bunch of humanoids running the marathon. And it was a little clunky, it was a little awkward, but we know they're going to get there. But I kept watching these humanoids running. I'd say, imagine how much faster they could be if they had wheels. And so it's like we have to look at what is the purpose of a humanoid versus a different form. If I want to get across town, I don't jump on a humanoid's back and then he runs. Yeah. If I want to get across town, I don't jump in a car and then have a humanoid drive it. Okay, not necessary. Or if you're in the food world, if I wanted to make 1,000 pancakes in an hour, I wouldn't have a humanoid, and have like 100 of them trying to make 1,000 pancakes. You could do it way more efficiently with specialized machinery and specialized robotics. Humanoids will work when the task that they're doing is low scale and in a highly human designed environment. So this would be like the home, where you're not doing laundry all day long. You're not cooking all day long. You're not cleaning all day long, but I need one machine that can do a lot of different things so it becomes generalized. And it's in a place that's designed for humans. And therefore, it has to act and move and ergonomically feel like a human. But places where you're doing high scale work, industrial scale work, you're just going to have a specialized machine that does it way better.
Okay, thank you, Travis Kalanick.
Yeah.
I leave the stage now to
Am I getting
Luca
up?
Benici, yes,
Okay.
partner McKinsey and Company, and the title is Sovereign AI, Power or Illusion.